Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? Coming up next, it's an interesting conversation to have around when you are trying to lose body fat, does it really matter how you do that? And there was a new study that I came across that answered that question, which does it really matter how you lose weight? And it sort of gives some insight about how we can think about dieting. So there is an endless debate about whether low carb or keto or cutting sugar or just eating less is the best way to actually approach weight loss. And is one approach better than the other? And does it affect more than just the number on the scale, which I think is the most important thing? So what we need to consider when we are changing our diets and thinking about shifting some body fat, especially if we need to do it for health-related reasons, we need to think about what is that going to impact other than the body fat loss. So how is it going to affect our other systems in our body? How is it going to affect our gut bacteria? How is it going to affect our ability to exercise or our motivation for exercise, which is the other piece of the puzzle? Because you don't want to be making changes to your diet so that they reduce your energy levels so you don't feel like you want to exercise. And the other thing too is when we're considering changes that we are going to make, we need to really consider, well, how sustainable is this new style of eating or the changes that we've made? So all of those factors are quite important, but the research showed that some are actually more important than others. So when we have a look at the research, the participants were split into three groups. One group cut down on sugar, so ate a lower sugar diet. The other group went full low carb and ketogenic style of diet. And the third made no changes to their diet at all, and they were the control group. Now, the researchers, as I mentioned, they weren't just watching the scales. Their focus was on whether the different diets also changed how active people were in their everyday lives. So would cutting the carbohydrates or sugar make them more sluggish? Would skipping the workouts or moving less without even realizing it if they cut that sugar out? And what's interesting that in this particular study, the participants weren't told that their activity levels were being tracked. They weren't told to exercise less or more, or even to focus on the weight. They were told that the idea of the study was to see what happened naturally outside of the lab with the changes to those diets. So what they found was quite interesting and pointed to a couple of important factors when we are changing our diet. So the keto group were those eating fewer carbohydrates. They actually did lose the most amount of weight, but about 3.8 kilos in 3 months. The low sugar group lost less. They lost 1.5 kilos over the 3 months. And the control group, which kept eating a high sugar diet and just their normal diet, actually gained a little weight, and it was all body fat that they gained because they were sticking to their normal diet and then just gradually over time just gaining weight. But what was really interesting, other than just those weight loss numbers, because we could look at that data and go, well, clearly keto is the answer, Snez. Thank you very much. But do not switch off just yet, because I do have some more information. Now, the keto group, even though they did lose more weight, they also saw a drop in a type of gut bacteria, which is linked to lower inflammation and also a healthy immune system. So that gut bacteria went down. And we don't know whether that's going to be a long-term problem for those people, but it's a reminder that the way that we lose weight can affect more than just our body fat levels. So if you are having a different type of diet affecting our gut bacteria or the way that our cells are functioning, then we really need to start to consider what's actually or if that is going to be the best thing for us. And on the other hand, the low sugar group lost only fat, while the keto group lost both fat and some lean muscle mass as well. And so for every 1% reduction in calories from sugar, people naturally ate about 17 few calories per day in the group that were eating the low sugar diet. And so what does all this mean? So there's definitely some diets that are more effective than other, but they're only marginally more effective. What we need to be looking at more clearly is how does it impact our other systems? How does that impact our ability to exercise? Because it didn't affect the activity levels of people. It didn't make them more or less active. So we need to make sure that it's not affecting our energy levels, but also understanding that quick fixes, such as the keto group who did that more rapid weight loss, but they also saw changes in their gut health, and they also lost some muscle along the way with the fat, which over the long term is actually going to make their future journey of continuing to lose weight a lot more challenging. And also, how sustainable are the changes that people are making? So if they're able to stick to the changes, so cutting back on sugar, which can make a huge difference and is really starting to stand out in this study as the preferred option for making healthy changes, but how likely are people able to stick with it? And depending on how much sugar is reduced, especially if it's sort of just the obvious sugar, not reducing fruit and all those natural sugars, then it can be quite easier to stick to than a pure traditional keto diet, which does eliminate quite a number of food groups. So what is really quite important there is not only finding an option that works, but an option that works for you and that you can continue with to make healthier changes for a long enough period of time to actually see some results. Now, the other thing is that none of the groups got what most experts now recommend for protein. And that was another missing factor in all of those diets. Because if you're trying to shift body fat, getting enough protein is going to be really important with keeping you feeling fuller and also making sure that you are getting the nutrients in to rebuild muscle and keep your muscle nice and healthy. So does it matter how we lose weight? The answer is yes and no, I guess. But the best diet, when we boil it down to, is one that is gradual, that is not too drastic, and one that you can stick with. Something that's going to support your health by giving you the nutrients that you need and not removing too many of the different food groups, and definitely one that's going to cut back on sugar. And if you are accustomed to eating larger quantities, just something that's going to allow you to consume less and still feel full. So your body is more than just a number on the scale. And what we're consuming and the diets have a much bigger impact. So we need to make sure that we're paying attention to how we feel, how our body's responding. Are you feeling stronger? Are you feeling more energized or fatigued? These are all of the different aspects that we need to look into before we can answer that question around, does it really matter whether how we lose the weight and what is the best method to shift some weight. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.